Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 115 of Through the Years, the podcast that reviews Ring of Honor, show by show, from the beginning. My name is Trevor Dane, joined as always by the co-host, Matt Feuerstein. And Matt, this isn't even the first podcast we've recorded together this week because, yes, folks, going to get in a quick plug here. The boys of summer are back. We were back on the 5-star match game with our friend and previous guest on the show, Justin Shapiro. The 5-star match game, of course, is the dreaded Joe Gagney's wrestling trivia podcast where we've appeared on a number of times. I do not do this time. We talked about Matt's prostate, among other things.
So I'm not going to talk about it here. That's exclusive to the 5-star match game.
Do you want to know the health of Matt's prostate? That you're never going to find out about it here. Never. You have to listen to that.
Yeah, at least as of now. One day, maybe.
There may be updates in the future on this show if it becomes a pressing matter. Hopefully not.
Don't press on my prostate, everybody.
Aw, I had plans. Anyway, how do I transition? We don't have any news between the last show and this show because it's, this show happened a day after the last show. So that means I don't even have anything to transition to except to say we're going from pressing on Matt's prostate or not doing that to Anarchy in the UK, which took place August 13th, 2006 at the Broxbourne Civic Hall, which as we talked about in the last episode, hilariously, Kerry Silkin said when they tried to sell him on running this small building in Broxbourne, it was sold to him as the Corrigan Hall of the UK. Anyway, it's him.
That's probably what it was. And it's fun. And by the way, isn't it fun, as we said on the last show, that once again our history is paralleling the present as the entire eyes of the wrestling world are fixated on London, and we are now doing a review of a show that took place right outside London 17 years ago. That's 17, right? My math is right, isn't it? Yes. Yeah. Okay. So it's just we've got a knack for timing, don't we, Trevor?
Yeah, I mean, we knew exactly this was going to sync up when we started the show over half a decade ago. We were like, there's going to be a new promotion. They're going to sell out Wembley Stadium in about 6 or whatever years. If we time it right now, we'll get there just before they run the show.
We did it.
It is kind of crazy.
There's confetti all around me right now.
So, to continue my introduction, in case you were wondering, yes, in fact, the Broxbourne Civic Hall is in Broxbourne, England, for a report crowd of 500 fans. Dave Meltzer wrote that this was a sellout, and looking at the building, we don't get a lot of great shots, but I can believe it. It looked pretty – it didn't quite look it kind of gave me studio wrestling vibes. It looked bigger than that, but definitely felt snug. Like it didn't – like you could tell, like, oh, yeah, this building doesn't seat a lot of people.
Yeah, so it's interesting because, obviously, usually they book the Saturday show – well, first, was this Saturday and Sunday, or was this a Friday and Saturday double shot?
I'm assuming this is a Friday Saturday. I can try and Google that quick if you keep talking for a second.
Okay, yeah, because usually the bigger show is on the Saturday, the bigger market, and I don't know which of these two shows was the bigger market because obviously Liverpool is a city, and this wasn't, but this is. I think this is the London metro area, right? So in some way,
I think it's like an hour from London.
So that's not so different than probably some of those Boston shows, and you know what I mean, like where none of those shows were actually in Boston, and some of them were away. I don't think Chicago Ridge is like a minute from Chicago. I think that's also outside of that. So I don't know. I think it counts as a London show, is what I'm trying to say.
So this is in fact a Saturday Sunday show. So this was Sunday. So your instincts were right. This is not a Friday Saturday, but a Saturday Sunday.
According to my Google Maps, Chicago Ridge is like 37 minutes from downtown Chicago. So I feel like it's not that different.
Yeah, I'm going to double check now. All we're going to do on this episode apparently is Google to start off because I'm Googling now just to double check. Yes, according to Google Maps, Broxbourne to London is 58-minute drive. So, yeah, right around an hour. So, yeah, you would think, again, it sounds like from the talk on the Last Stop Penn Station podcast that Ian Riccoboni and Kerry Silkin did that we talked about on the last show, it sounds like the way Kerry talked on that show, that he just kind of let Alex Shane kind of run, like, Alex Shane was the guy, the local promoter who, like, talked him into even running England, talked about, like, these are the buildings we can run, blah, blah, blah. But so it kind of sounds like he was just like, well, even I have some reservations about why are we running a building this small the second night? Like, it was like he wanted it, so we're doing it. But yeah, it is kind of crazy. Maybe he had a deal with this building or something, but it is kind of crazy that you would not, when you were an hour from London, seeing how well the first show, Liverpool ended up doing, you would not try and find a building in like an hour vicinity that could draw, 1,500, 2,000 seats, But it is funny, though, that the PW Torch wrote afterwards, ROH announced they intend to run several shows per year in the UK. And in fact, the Observer would then add later, the plan for 2007 in Ring of Honor is to do 2 or 3 UK tours in the year. Now, to kind of jump ahead, they're only ever going to run 2 more shows during like the Sapolsky era in the UK next year, a few months into the next year.
And they're both going to be in Liverpool, right? Because the Broxburn show didn't happen that time, right?
Yeah, during this show, they announced, we're going to come back and we're going to do, just like we did this time, we're going to do Liverpool and then Broxburn. And when they do come back, they have scrapped the Broxburn. They're just doing 2 straight nights in Liverpool at the Olympia. So I think like the Brit Wrestling Experience podcast, I don't know if they were 100% sure, but I think they were kind of talking about their kind of memory of this was Alex Shane, between like the second UK tour of ROH and when they might have planned another one, Alex Shane kind of jumped from like, TNA now wants to run England and they're going to, pay me more. And so he just kind of abandoned Ring of Honor. And maybe that's the reason why Ring of Honor was so reliant on him and just didn't feel like making the connections or doing the legwork themselves, that they just decided, okay, I mean, if this guy's jumping to TNA now, I guess we're not going to run 2 or 3 UK tours in 2007.
Makes sense to me.
Either way, we open in the ring with Bobby Cruz introducing Austin Aries. Austin comes out with his ribs taped up, Roderick Strong by his side. Roderick Strong, not the injured one. A crazy difference from his current role on AEW TV. And Aries gets a nice reaction. Aries says this is going to be the hardest promo he's ever had to cut, which I was like, that seems a little melodramatic. But then I thought, well, he was young. He hadn't had that long career. Maybe this was the hardest promo he ever had to cut. He goes, as much as I want to wrestle tonight, I've suffered broken ribs against the Briscoes the night before. Aries' voice actually cracks as he says this. So, either he's pretty good at either this is some of the best acting I've seen from Austin Aries, or maybe he was kind of feeling like he was letting people down. But either way, his voice cracks as he says, as much as he wants to wrestle, his body won't let him. Crowd chants, thank you, Austin. And Roddy gives him a nice, heartwarming hug when the final countdown hits.
Well, also, I'm just going to mention, he says like he doesn't think he can give the fans the performance they deserve, which kind of, validates what we guessed last time, which is that, the reason that he didn't work this show but worked other shows later in the week is that he didn't feel he could give an ROH level performance, not because he couldn't do like anything at all.
Yeah, and the reporting also made it sound like maybe he initially thought he had broken ribs, and then maybe shortly after he kind of found out, or maybe he went to a clinic or something, just got, well, they're just really badly bruised. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, you're probably not going to wreck them more in that, probably if you go gentle. But either way, the crowd chants, thank you, Austin. Final countdown hits. Out comes the new unified Ring of Honor champ, Bryan Danielson, with both the Pure and the World title belts. The crowd chants, fuck you, Dragon. Bryan calls the fans in England stupid and goes on to say he's not just the best wrestler in the world, but he's the best champion in the world because he's never allowed broken ribs to stop him from wrestling. Bryan questions Aries' character and bets he doesn't even have broken ribs, which actually turns out he's true. Bryan was right about that. He's just collecting a payday. The crowd chants, fuck him up, Austin, fuck him up. And Bryan says Aries can't fuck him up even when he's healthy, so let alone with screwed up ribs. Bryan tries to keep talking, but Roddy quickly snatches the mic away at this point. Roderick says that it pisses him off that Bryan questions the character of one of the hardest working men in the business. Roddy, since he doesn't have a match tonight with Aries injured, then challenges Bryan to a match tonight. There's a big pop for that. The crowd's excited for that kind of impromptu, match. Bryan says there's nothing in his contract that says he has to face Roddy. The crowd chants pussy at Bryan. Bryan freaks out about that. Says, I've already beaten Roddy 3 times. Crowd chants pussy again. Bryan says, fine. You want me to kill Roderick Strong one more time? You've got it. As Bryan goes to the back, he is in something that comes off incredibly random. He is attacked from behind by SUWA with a kendo stick. In a funny moment, the crowd is chanting for SUWA. And so SUWA, who played a heel the first night, who's now attacking the champion with a kendo stick, he pauses his kendo stick attack and he gives a very polite little bow to the crowd. And then he starts attacking Bryan with the stick again. So very polite. He's like, yes, I acknowledge you guys are enjoying this. He then leaves. Then Aries and Strong calmly walk by Danielson as he arrives in pain. So we're setting up, double duty for Danielson. He's got what do you do when Aries is off the show and you have to throw out the tag title match and all that? You put Danielson in a position to work 2 matches.
Yeah. So first of all, I like this segment. I think if you're going to set a bunch of stuff up, this was a good way to do it. It's good to get Aries out in front of the crowd. Danielson, I think, did a lot of good crowd work and ad-libbing. Strong was, for his part, okay on the mic, best you could expect at least. And I think, I don't know, getting SUWA involved seemed to excite the crowd, and I think it all worked out. I think this was a fun opening to the show. But it left me with the question, other than the tag team title match, what did they have to rearrange on this show? Do you have info on that?
I tried to look up stuff, and I couldn't find – so many of my sources on the Wayback Machine are now not available for this time period. I probably could have looked even harder, but it sounded like they announced way more for the Olympia show at the Liverpool show at the Olympia.
Yeah, they were gonna book the Sunday show based on what happened on the Saturday show.
And from the sounds of it, this show, the tickets, from looking at the research, this show, the tickets sold out almost really quickly. It sold out, and since it's only a few hundred tickets, so they probably thought, it's the old we really don't have to announce, anything really, in the sense of we've sold the tickets, So
sounds familiar to 2023 ears, but I'm not going to say anything more than that.
But I did see there was originally supposed to be Jimmy Rave versus Colt Cabana on this night. And obviously they were building last night. They had set up on the last night show for this night. It was supposed to be Aries and Strong versus the winners of that tag match. It was supposed to be Aries and Strong versus
Doug Williams,
Jody Fleisch and Doug Williams. Yes. Yeah. So we know those. So they switched that up. So it's Doug Williams, Jimmy Rave tonight. Colt Cabana's in a 6-man tag. So that definitely changes. But
was it going to just be Danielson against SUWA? And what would have been the main event in that case? It's interesting to think about.
Yeah, it's definitely something weird to consider because there aren't a lot of great candidates, right? If Aries is Strong are used up, Doug Williams is used up. They're all in the same match. Jimmy Rave's wrestling Colt Cabana in this original card. I'm trying to think. You could have done Danielson, Davey Richards, which we know they kind of had a thought of doing that the first night in for Davey Richards before he got hurt. Is Danielson Matt Sydal big enough? I don't know.
I think Danielson and Richards would have probably gone over pretty well at the time.
Yeah,
better than Danielson Sydal, I think.
Yeah. So next up we get Go Shiozaki in the opening match defeats BJ Whitmer via pinfall in 15 minutes 20 seconds after he hit a moonsault. So kind of a long opener, So what'd you think about this one, Matt?
Well, first of all, I want to mention that at the very beginning, Jared David alludes to Anarchy last night at the hotel, which kind of affirms some of the stories Alan told on our last show. But I for this match, this is the sort of opener, the indie style opener that you really rarely saw in ROH these days, where I'm not going to say they had a main event style match, but it didn't seem like they were really holding back too much. They just went out there and, they threw hard strikes, had forearm battles. They did dive to the outside, and then they went into a bunch of near falls. Northern Lights, Brainbuster by Whitmer, both getting 2 counts. Fisherman Buster by Go getting a 2 count, Missile Dropkick by Go getting a 2 count. Whitmer came back with a loud form and a big boot, but then Go hit a super kick and like a swinging Uranagi slam for a 2 count, which was cool. Then it's funny because we got a "This is awesome" chant, followed by a "Shut the fuck up" chant, which I feel like that was more apropos the night before when they were chanting "This is awesome" at like nothing.
At Whitmer, this is the wrong Whitmer match to get in that, because Whitmer Claudio got what I think I call in that show maybe the most undeserved "This is awesome" chant I've ever heard. But
obviously the "This is awesome" chant was already getting on some people's nerves by this point in 2006, even though it was still a pretty new chant, because it got a "Shut the fuck up" chant. But then they go Mr. Moonsault. Then BJ ends up hitting a German suplex, flipping Go all the way over. Eventually, both guys struggle to their feet and hit a double clothesline, and they're knocked down, going for that big applause spot that I've talked about recently. So you could tell they were trying to go epic there. They get up, Go hits another high knee. Whitmer comes back with a big lariat, gets a 2 count. Whitmer hits a dragon suplex with a bridge, gets a 2 count. The Whitmer hits both ropes, hits another lariat, but Go gets his feet on the ropes. They have another forearm exchange, which they have had a few of in this match, and they end up hitting the ropes and then hitting like running forearms, and then Whitmer gets a sudden drop kick to the leg, hits the ropes, and then Go hits his own lariat, which Whitmer kicks out of. Then Shiozaki gets on a grounded Cobra clutch, but Whitmer gets his foot on the bottom rope, and then Go hits a German suplex into the turnbuckle, followed by a bridging German suplex for another 2 count. At this point, I started to think it was getting excessive. And so then Shiozaki goes up, hits another moonsault, this time hits it, gets the clean pin. I was actually surprised by that finish, but I probably shouldn't have been given the politics involved. But I think this is the sort of match that Whitmer is good at. It's not a ton of selling, bomb throwing, near falls. If I definitely understand why people don't like it, because again, it's not a lot of selling and they're just kind of excessive. I think if this would have ended 3 minutes earlier, around the time they did the double knockdown spot, I would have probably liked it a lot. I think it went 3 minutes too long, and it went to the point where I liked it a lot to just kind of where I just kind of liked it a little. I thought it was a fun, over-the-top indie-style opener, but I don't think that it was – I don't think it was as good as it could have been, because I think they just overstayed their welcome a little bit. And again, this kind of match is not for everybody because they're just, out there doing stuff. But the reason I say it went on too long is if you watch it, you will notice the crowd reactions get louder and louder until that point in the double knockdown spot, and then the crowd reactions get worse and worse after that, which tells me they peaked too early. But yeah, I appreciated something different as an opener, because you don't get this too often in ROH in this era. So I think that it was among the better openers that we've seen in a while.
Yeah, this is one of those matches where we kind of feel a little bit differently, but a lot of things you said are almost verbatim what I'm looking at in my notes, for the notes I jotted down while I was watching this. To me, this felt like the most BJ Whitmer match that has ever BJ Whitmer. It's not his best match by a long shot, but I feel like this match kind of sums up BJ Whitmer, and you were kind of touching on that too. There are a million suplexes and head drops and near falls and chops and hard lariats. Both guys are working very hard, and yet it all feels kind of oddly generic to me. And to me, that's kind of how I think of BJ Whitmer, where, except in those certain special matches, the Jimmy Jacobs matches, the Necro Butcher match, stuff like that, where, BJ Whitmer's a guy who I feel like he gives a ton of effort. He's almost always giving you a really hard, honest effort, but he doesn't really have much of any other element of wrestling. I don't think BJ Whitmer's a great storyteller or a particularly amazing seller. I don't think he has a very, huge amount of charisma. I mean, there are wrestlers that have less charisma than him, but he doesn't have a ton of it. He is kind of a work rate wrestler, even though that term already by this era I think was out of date, but kind of the literal sense. He works at a good rate and he gives you that, and I don't think he gives you a ton else but that. And I think in this match this is a pure work rate match. It's two guys doing a lot of stuff, working hard, hitting hard. The crowd, I thought, did seem to love the match. Yeah, they did probably get overwhelmed, but they did. I mean, like on this night, even like I did notice exactly. Like I'm looking at my notes. I noticed exactly what you did, Matt, which is I feel like we were in 2005. We talked a lot about how something we noticed when we were rewatching 2005 ROH is how much a lot of the undercard matches kind of held back a little bit, like they were where like compared to modern indie or even modern mainstream wrestling, that philosophy's way less prevalent now. It's much more, do a lot of stuff and we'll just try and top it later, or if we don't top it, we'll deal with it. 2006, Ring of Honor, I feel like they've been moving a little bit away from that. I think like guys have been given a bit more on the undercards, been getting closer, but this really did feel like watching this like a PWG in the teens years of wrestling, where like the opener is just as balls out and has no restrictions as the main event that night will. Like these guys just go insane with the near falls and the spots. And there are arguments for and against it, but I feel like on a show like this, where the card's been changed and you're not working, Joe couldn't make it because of the TNA commitments. Homicide couldn't make it. Daniels couldn't make it because of the TNA commitments. The injury to Aries. I feel like if there ever is a night to just tell guys in a random opener, like, just go buck wild, like, do everything, this is probably the kind of show to do that on.
And I bet that is exactly why they did it.
Yeah. And, I would give this match, Joe Lanza of Voices of Wrestling has popularized. I've heard a bunch of other podcasts use it now, but I want to give credit. The phrase, the gentleman's three, the idea of that match where you're not really that enthused with it, but they worked so hard that like you can't deny it that it was not at least good by some metric. I kind of want to give this a good, but like a gentleman's three good, where it was like you worked really hard. There's something about that was just missing to me. You went overkill, but goddamn, you worked hard. And like, yeah. I can't say I was bored, but
I'd probably go like the gentleman's 3.5. Like I feel like the same way you did, but I just feel like that's worth more to me than I guess what you would describe. Yeah.
And I do agree with your point too. Like, that I feel like there's some people that are probably going to like this match more than us. And I bet you there's some people that are going to outright I think I've seen a couple reviews. I know there are people that outright probably really dislike this match, Yeah. It depends what you're looking for.
Because again, no selling and overkill of near falls.
Yeah. But, in terms of individual match highlights, I really like that sick looking BJ, Whitmer brainbuster, and maybe like not a good highlight, but if you're asking me what I'm going to remember from this match, it's that rare moment in wrestling where BJ at one point is running the ropes and the referee hasn't gone out of the way, so he has to sidestep him as he runs the ropes, which is always a funny moment for me. And the other thing you mentioned, you brought up, like, again, all the points I want to touch on. You and me are simpatico lately. Is that thing, the booking, probably because Go won. Go is from Noah. They probably felt like, we should do this. But I did feel like it was kind of odd booking in the sense of, BJ Whitmer's coming off of like the most momentum he's ever going to have in Ring of Honor. He just beat the Necro Butcher in that big match. Then the next show, he beats Claudio on, the night before this on the first half of the double show. And he announces in a promo, like, it's time for me to chase a title. And the very next night he loses clean. Like, I get it. The card probably had to be tossed around. You do what you got to do, but it was kind of funny, like a weird time for him to take a loss. We got the "Let's go chant, which is always funny, that we got on the last show. Dave Prazak on commentary noted that tonight's show has a sort of unscripted feel to it. So that little bit of a wink and a nod, or maybe not even much of a wink, basically just say, hey, remember those other shows we ran called Unscripted 2 when the card had to be shuffled because of crazy changes? Like, that's basically what you're getting tonight. We're just not going to call it Unscripted 3.
Yeah, no wink, just a big nod.
Yeah, and then at the end we get a little thing from Prazak where he remarks, hopefully we can see Go Shiozaki back in Ring of Honor one day. And in fact, we would see him a bunch of times in Ring of Honor one day. So I wonder if they already knew at this point, like, we're going to get him on an excursion, or if this was just hopeful thinking, or if this was, again, was this a wink? But
yeah, Go really didn't start coming to ROH with any regularity really until like what, 08? Or was it later 07?
I'm not even sure. My memory for dates and crap is awful, but it definitely is in the Gabe era.
Yeah, I remember a lot of him in '08. And I remember some good matches he had when they went to Japan in '07. But there's a really good match he had with Aries that was actually kind of similar to this in terms of like just like a lot of big near falls at the anniversary show they held in 2008. But we'll get to that in several years.
Next, we join Jimmy Rave and Prince Nana backstage. Nana says they had an unbelievable night in Liverpool last night. He says they had more birds than the Beatles. Rave, meanwhile, is mad that the British fans threw toilet paper at him last night, even though he told the British fans, don't do that. And as a result, he says there's hell to pay. I want to take on one of Britain's own tonight. He goes, I want to take on Doug Williams to get revenge on the British people. And again, this is one of those things I always point out. Ring of Honor, it's a very minor thing, but they tried really hard to give you reasons for even matches like this, which was not originally scheduled. They go to the trouble of having Jimmy Rave shoot like this little 30-second promo to say, there's a reason why I want to wrestle Doug Williams tonight. Like, it's very minor, but it's a connective tissue a lot of companies weren't doing, And
it's certainly a lot of companies don't do now either. So it's good it's good to see.
Johnny Storm in our next match. Johnny Storm defeats Jody Fleisch and Spud in 6 minutes, 34 seconds. This is a three-way dance, not a handicap match, by the way, when he pins Spud with a half Nelson Michinoku driver. At one point, Dave Prazak during this match on commentary says future bookings in Ring of Honor could be on the line for these three men in this match. Now, I looked it up on I looked it up on Cage Match. This would be Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm's last matches with Ring of Honor until a 2018 double shot in the UK. So maybe they just had really long-term thinking there. Spud would never wrestle for them ever again. So maybe he took the fall, Matt, that, he could have been there in 2018 too if he was available. If not for, he didn't win. So,
yep.
And then Jared David adds on commentary, he says, the winner of this match will be remembered and they'll be known as the undisputed high flyer of the United Kingdom for who knows how long. I have a guess about how long. I would say 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
Being generous there, Trevor.
So, this was 6.5 minutes of spots. And I've certainly seen a ton of these kinds of matches that were better. I've also seen many that were worse. So this was fun enough, I would describe it. I think maybe the most impressive thing is like for a 6.5 minute match where they tried to jam pack a ton of moves, there was no like really huge significant botch of any kind. Like Fleisch even hits his 720 springboard DDT that he whiffed on the night before. He hits it clean here. And the real highlight of this match for me though was there was this sequence where Johnny Storm and Spud are on the floor. Storm has Spud up on his shoulders for a power bomb. He sees Fleisch is springboarding to the top rope to like do a dive on the outside. And so as soon as Jody Fleisch springboards onto the top rope, as he's standing on the top rope, he just kind of bounces Spud in the power bomb position against the ropes, knocks Fleisch off the rope, and then he turns around and power bombs Spud into the barricades. And I don't know how much it hurt, but hot damn, did it make just this giant loud sound. And, again, it's 6.5 minutes of spots. There's not much more I can say other than I thought this was above average. It wasn't long enough to be much more than that. It might have fallen apart. It was much longer than that. It is kind of funny that the three of the Brit locals only get 6.5 minutes on a show that's kind of besieged by injuries and guys that couldn't be booked on the show. But in terms of the opportunity they got, I think they did about as well as they could.
Yeah, I mean, I pretty much agree. I probably even enjoyed it a little bit more than you, even though I don't have any, there's no qualitative points that I could point to that make it better than what you said. I think I just appreciated, it felt like kind of a throwback to a different era of ROH. They don't have a ton of matches like this during this era. And, just like the first match, I think that makes it stand out a little bit. It was fast-paced, a little bit nonsensical, but, how many ROH nonsensical scrambles did we see in the glory days before this? So this felt like a throwback match, especially when you had Storm and Fleisch. Made me feel like I was watching 2002 again. So I appreciate it on that level. I also... is that move that shooting star springboard shooting star double stomp a thing that Jody Fleisch did a lot? Because that was crazy, and I thought it was just supposed to be a shooting star press where he landed on his feet, but the announcer said it was a double stomp that he did. Do you know of him doing that move?
I'm not sure. I haven't watched a ton of Jody Fleisch outside of like some of his indie work, but it is one of those things where, yeah, like I was thinking, like I think Sanjay Dutt used to do the moonsault double stomp, and I was thinking like doing like a flip into a double stomp always seems so cool to me. I was like, why don't more guys do it? And my assumption is it probably is not like a particularly safe.
Yeah, it's harder.
Like,
It's harder. It's harder to control where you stomp. Probably, you know what I mean? Like the spot on the person that you stomp. And I assume that's important to not like breaking their ribs or any other part of their body. When the way you land on someone is important. Didn't they say Danielson broke his forearm when Okada like elbow dropped him, right?
Yeah, like basically Danielson said he stuck his arm out. He had his arm like not pinned against his body, and I guess just like the weight of Okada coming off the top rope, landing on the arm, broke his forearm.
Right. So it's like it's important to land the way you know you're supposed to land, right? Because I think it's dangerous either way. So I think that's probably what it is. But it's a really cool move. They had a lot of cool spots in their short time. There was one that I liked where Fleisch picked up Spud and then stormed missile dropkick Spud's head, which spun Spud around into a DDT on Fleisch. I don't know. See if you could follow what I just said. Probably can't. But trust me, it was cool and it was different. I liked it. But yeah, I just like they tried a lot of stuff, and it was entertaining, and it didn't overstay its welcome like I thought the previous match did. So I think that as far as an entertaining undercard that is fun and has a lot of energy, I think they're 2 for 2 so far on this show.
So after the match, the Kings of Wrestling, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli, along with Chad Collier, run in and attack all 3 competitors from the last match. Fans start throwing a few rolls of the toilet paper they brought for Jimmy Rave at them. For the first time in ROH, Hero and Claudio do that really cool KRS-One finisher to Spud, where for people that haven't seen it, where basically they have it so their opponent's on their shoulders, where the guy's basically like almost planking on their shoulders, where their feet draped over one guy's shoulders, his arms and whatever's draped over the other guy's shoulders, and they basically just toss him in the air and flip him so he goes up real high, just crashes down on his back. KRS-One, obviously a nod to the band, but I think Hero said it stands for Kings Reign Supreme over everyone.
By the band, you mean the rapper, yes?
Oh yeah, I sound like an old man. That singer, KRS-One. But Hero grabs the mic, gets showered with fuck you, Hero chants. Fans continue to throw toilet paper, and Hero asks one fan if they want to die. Hero says that last match was inferior, and so is all of British wrestling. Hero says he hates Ring of Honor. He hates everything it stands for. Collier then gets hit right in the face with a roll of toilet paper that gets a huge pop, one of the biggest pops of the night so far, honestly. Hero says Collier's been an outcast since day one, and now ROH has turned their back on him, which they kind of have. Hero says the Kings of Wrestling are here to ruin ROH's precious UK debut, at which point Nigel McGuinness and Robbie Brookside run in and attack them, chasing them from the ring. The crowd chants for Nigel as he grabs the mic and says he is damn proud to say that he's a British wrestler, and you can't say British wrestling without the name Robbie Brookside. Nigel challenges them to get their limey asses in the ring and take on the best British wrestling has to offer. 3-on-2. We don't care. Collier and the Kings of Wrestling then immediately take them up on that offer. They start beating down Nigel and Robbie very quickly. The numbers game wins out until Colt Cabana's music hits. He runs to the ring to attack the Kings of Wrestling, and Collier chases them out of the ring. Cabana gets a big chant, calls the Kings of Wrestling girls, says next time the fans will throw tampons at them. Colt says Nigel and Robbie may be Britain's finest, but when Colt is outside of Chicago, he calls England home. He challenges the Kings of Wrestling and Collier to a 6-man tag. He even starts an easy Big Daddy chant like he did the night before. The crowd does a big involved Hero is a pussy, Hero is a pussy, na, hey, na, hey chant. So, yeah, and that brings us to the match. It's a 6-man tag. Colt Cabana, Nigel McGuinness, and Robbie Brookside defeated Chad Collier and the Kings of Wrestling, Chris Hero and Claudio Castagnoli in 15 minutes, 38 seconds when McGuinness pinned Collier after hitting the rebound lariat. So this would be our farewell to Collier in the Gabe era of Ring of Honor. And, Nigel McGuinness. I don't know if they had bigger plans for Nigel tonight if he hadn't gotten a legit concussion the night before and, gotten beaten all the shit and had to go to the hospital even the night before. But this is what we got from him. And what'd you think about the match, Matt?
Well, like you said with the singing, I after seeing all like modern wrestling shows with all the singing from the UK crowds, I was wondering where it was on the Liverpool show, and they definitely brought it on this one. Unfortunately, a lot of the singing was incredibly homophobic, and so or sexist. So just so the British could say, we can't be out homophobe by the United States crowds back then. So that was not great, but they did do a lot of singing. As far as the match, first of all, actually, I want to mention. So, do you think that the Collier stuff from Unified was to set up why he joined the Kings of Wrestling team here, or do you think that was just a lucky coincidence?
I think that was a lucky coincidence because if it's a storyline. It's a storyline that has they were very, it would remind me of the people that still to this day are like the Montreal Screwjob was a storyline. It's like, you really think they had that much commitment where it's like, you know what, Chad, we're going to do a storyline where we shit on you. And then to really, sell it, we're not going to book you ever again. Like that, at some point, that's not a storyline.
Right. When I say storyline, I just mean like, do you think that he wouldn't have said it on the DVD if not for this match? I guess that's more what I'm thinking.
I'm not sure. I think if nothing else, I think this shows an awareness that like everyone involved knew that like we had already stopped booking this guy. Like,
right.
Just the idea that Hero's able to bring up the idea that Ring of Honor's abandoned this guy. Like they were clearly acknowledging like, hey, Ring of Honor has decided that, whether Gabe was playing into it the night before or not, I think those reflect kind of Gabe's real thoughts.
Oh yeah, no doubt about that. I wasn't disputing that. I was just wondering if like it was like there was a method to the madness of saying that on a DVD release, which just seemed so over the top. But at the very least, it gives him a little bit of plausible deniability for being so rude on the Unified DVD. But anyway, as far as the match, I don't know. I just I didn't like it. Like there was fun stuff in it, but it just felt so like lackadaisical to me. It just felt like such a there were so many charismatic characters in the match. Hero, Cabana, Nigel. You have Brookside. Collier. I guess you could say he has charisma. It's his own unique kind. And Claudio does too. But like this just felt so slapped together, which I know that it was. So like, I don't know. I guess like, I'm not saying it was bad. It was probably even a little bit good, but I didn't enjoy it. It just felt like they were just messing around with the live crowd. And that's probably great for the live crowd, but it's really not so great watching on DVD. You know what I'm talking about? There are these matches like that, just like they seem like they'd be a blast to be in the crowd for, but when you're not in the crowd for them, you're like, okay, this is all just kind of like missing for me, like going over my head a little bit. Does that make sense?
I'll read you something I wrote in my notes this is word for word what I wrote in my notes at the time, Matt. Now, to the crowd there live, they're having the time of their life. To the home viewer, I can see someone enjoying this, but I can also see them viewing this as a bit of a waste of these guys if they were hoping for a card with maximum action. This isn't really a high-octane match and only picks up in terms of excitement in the final minutes. So, yeah, this is a match where clearly you watch it and it feels like if you were just there to see these guys live and interact with them and shit talk them and chant and throw toilet paper, like these fans are seeing like they're just loving this. But yeah, for us that have seen these acts a lot, we're not there live. It's not the novelty. Oh, it's the first time they've ever come to our country. It's a different experience, right? It's a completely different experience.
Yeah. So, I mean, they just kind of fool around a lot early. There's a decent amount of stalling. There was one point where Prazak said on commentary, how did Hero weasel his way onto 2 ROH shows in a row? And I'm just thinking, like, you know what? That's a good question, Dave Prazak. Storyline-wise, it's like, you probably shouldn't just not let this guy have 2 impromptu matches, because you'd think that probably part of the deal involves getting paid for these matches, right? If you don't like him. There was one point where Brookside took Hero down and ties him up, while you could just hear Cabana on the apron yell, like a pretzel, from the apron, which was funny to me. Also, that's a good song by Madonna, Like a Pretzel. Got Like a Virgin.
Salted for the very first time.
Like a Virgin, Like a Prayer, Like a Pretzel. just like a pretzel. I'll take you to Wetzel's. It's like a dream to be. All right. I'm so sorry.
But
yeah,
been on a tear this week.
Yeah, we've all been on various tears, haven't we? Just as long as nobody tears their prostate. Is that a thing that happens? I don't know. I'm not sure.
Write into throughtheyears@gmail.com if a man can tear his prostate.
Or if anyone. Yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, then they do start doing more moves, more 2 counts, Claudio sits on the top rope and drives his knee into Nigel and kind of rides him down, gets a 2 count off of that. Brookside hits an iconoclasm and does this like wacky pinning combo with a bridge at one point. Collier gets a quick power slam on Brookside. There's one point where Nigel hits Collier with the Tower of London. Claudio comes in with the Alpamari water slide. Then Brookside hits Claudio with a cradle suplex. Then Hero comes in and hits Brookside with the spinning cravat slam. Then Cabana drops Hero's neck on his knee. Then Collier hits a German suplex on Cabana. And we get our second time of the night where everyone is down and gets the big applause. Man, I spoke too soon about not having enough matches with that, huh?
They heard you.
Yeah.
The years.
They did. They heard me echoing in the ages. That's what we should change the name of our podcast to. But wouldn't that be random if we just did that?
We'd have to cover like a promotion that has like the initials like CHO and capitalize that.
Yeah, it's like when IHOP became IHOB.
Oh, you mean the International House of Burgers?
Yes, of course. But so then we eventually get Nigel and Collier trading forearms, and there's another thing we got in a previous match. And then Collier drop kicks Nigel into the rebound lariat, and Nigel gets the pin on that. So I guess one thing you could say is they're getting the I guess what they eventually call the jawbreaker lariat over as a finisher. But I just thought the match was weird and didn't flow, and I thought it was honestly maybe the low light of the night for me.
So, to me, this match, if I talked about like the opener, Shiozaki, Whitmer having like that PWG vibe of the opener can be as crazy as the main event. This had that PWG vibe of the 10-man tag on the Bola weekends, the final night where they take a bunch of guys that have been eliminated from the tournament and just have like a really goofy comedy match. Now, they didn't go that as crazy with the comedy on this show, but it was very much, it felt like one of those matches where, yeah, like you were saying, kind of lackadaisical, kind of like, we're just here to kind of like, we're not going to try and thrill you. We know you're going to have a good time watching us. We're going to kind of take it easy a bit. We're just going to do a lot of crowd interaction, a little bit of comedy, maybe give you a few big spots at the end. And again, I can see if you were there live, you would have loved this. Clearly I think the crowd there, they absolutely love to hate Hero and Claudio. I liked Claudio here as the chicken shit heel with his hilariously horrendous impression of Colt Cabana, which consists of him saying, "I'm Colt Cabana," and that's all. And later on, there's a moment where he like runs to the crowd and Colt chases after him, and Claudio like jumps on like this risen area that's on the like almost like a bleacher that's on the fans are sitting at, and he just books it like across like super fast. And I thought stuff like that was amusing. But yeah, I can, if you just want kind of a laid back match, I can see people liking this. To me, if you just want, again, if you're like, I'm paying $15, $20 for the DVD at the time and my hard earned money, I want to see like, there's a lot of good talent in this match. I want to see like good matches. This match really does only pick up in those final minutes right after when Brookside makes the hot tag to Nigel. But then again, I feel bad criticizing that because Nigel came to this match fucked up, like Prazak on commentary multiple times, and during this match he even tries to sell that, like, Nigel should not even be wrestling tonight.
Which is definitely true.
Yeah, Nigel does kind of get the stretch run where that's the time where the match picks up and he gets to shine a bit. It's surprisingly Colt, for a guy that's so beloved in the UK, who's a very good wrestler, who was coming into this fresh, like, he gets used very little in this match to the point where late in the match, the crowd actually starts, we want Colt, and then almost immediately they tag him in. But it was like, yeah, I did notice that too. Like the same time the crowd did, like, man, Colt's barely in this match. But So I'd put this as like a very low above average because I was decently entertained, but I could see people liking it even less, like you sound like you did. I could see people, again, if you just kind of want the vibe of just, I want heel shenanigans, I want a lot of crowd interaction, you do get that stuff. Other notes from this match, the fans sing chant when Hero takes it in the ass, so they were really going with the songs. Hero got a hug from Claudia on the outside to soothe him from that. There was a cheating bastards chant to which Prazak on commentary said, "I love the accent," because he just was really appreciating it. They weren't. I'm not going to attempt a British accent. I can't do accents, but they were chanting cheating bastards, but in the way a British gentleman and gentlewomen would say.
Bastards. Send your hate mail my way, everybody.
And also, I will say, Colt wasn't in much, but he did take a very nasty-looking bump from a Chad Collier German suplex. Like, if you want, maybe, I don't know if I should call that a highlight, but it was one of the more, like, in a match that didn't have a lot of big action moments, that was the moment where I was like, ooh, look at that. But we then joined Doug Williams backstage. He says it's great to be back in Ring of Honor. He accepts Jimmy Rave's challenge, and he wishes him the very best of British luck. The most notable part of this very short, very unnotable promo was Doug Williams was wearing a Minoru Suzuki t-shirt. So Doug Williams ahead of the curve here.
Yes. Also, it is notable that even like Doug Williams even got like promo time. You really haven't seen a Doug Williams promo on an ROH show since those very early appearances where they basically gave everyone a promo back in the 2002 shows. But so it was nice to hear from him. My good pal, Doug.
And next, we join Bobby Cruz back on the ring as he thanks the live fans on behalf of Ring of Honor for making this entire weekend possible. He then announces that Ring of Honor will return to the UK, going to Broxburn on March 2nd and the Liverpool Olympia on March 3rd, which, again, as we mentioned, they will not be going back to Broxburn. They will just be doing 2 nights in Liverpool. Bryan Danielson then walks back out to the ring and snatches the mic away from Cruz. Bryan says he's been trying to get a hold of SUWA since he attacked him, and apparently he won't come out and fight Bryan unless he puts the title on the line. Well, then Bryan says, well, SUWA, get your butt out here. I'll put the title on the line. I'll beat you. Then I'll beat Roddick for the title later. Out comes SUWA. We get our first of 2 ROH World title matches. Bryan Danielson successfully defends the title, defeating SUWA via pinfall in 10 minutes, 8 seconds with a small package. Matt, this match I felt like was a real curiosity in the Danielson title reign, which we've seen every match of. First off, starts saying you don't see Bryan do very often. He's done occasionally with like matches with Homicide stuff, but it starts with a crowd brawl. SUWA like immediately chucks his kendo stick at Bryan. Bryan comes outside. They just start throwing. They brawl to the back of the building, which isn't that far, again, not a big building. And then one the key spots of the match and really the night, SUWA hits Bryan hard in the head with one of the building's chairs, but they're not folding chairs. They're like just legit chairs, and immediately just opens up a big, badly bleeding gash on the back of Bryan's head. And then the real weirdness starts. It's as weird as that, that's mildly weird for Danielson stuff. The weird, the cut is weird, but the weird seems soft selling. But the fact that it starts the crowd brawl, the real weirdness is when they get back in the ring and the match officially begins. Because one of the main characteristics of Bryan's ROH World title reign, I think we've seen, is how dominant he usually is in his matches. I'd go as far as to say, in his entire career, not just Ring of Honor, he's never been booked as more of a dominant figure and worked in the ring as more of a dominant figure than the Ring of Honor World title run he's in the middle of here. And if anything, Bryan could occasionally be border on eating up his opponents at times during this reign if they didn't like assert themselves. And then you watch this match, Bryan gets almost no offense in the first half of this match. And by the end of the match, I would say maybe he got 15% of the total offense of the match. He gets overwhelmed, like in a way you never see him during this title reign. Like, he's losing strike exchanges to SUWA. SUWA's outright no-selling Bryan at one point early in the match. Even when Bryan wins, it's with like a small package out of desperation, like against the flow of the offense. Like, SUWA's back on offense. Bryan just gets a small package and like bails out of there. And if you watch this match in a vacuum, you think that Bryan was like an underdog that was like 2 or 3 rungs lower in the company's hierarchy than SUWA, rather than SUWA being like the kind of liked, but like not a particularly giant star who's never been in the company before except this weekend. I still enjoyed the match, I will say. SUWA works at a more methodical pace than you usually see in Ring of Honor, but it's also focused in the sense he's really focusing on Bryan's back. At one point, he even karate chops Bryan's head cut too. So I appreciate that he was kind of focused on things in the match. He's also good about, I noticed watching this match, where he will do some submission work or something, but then he will break it up with a move like that's more exciting. Like he'll do like a submission, then a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker, then back to a submission. Like he's trying to break things up to make sure that the crowd doesn't lose attention. I can't go higher than good on this. It was not a match where they were going to show steal or anything like that, like maybe 3.25 stars. And it's a very weird match, and maybe I just enjoyed the novelty of it. But it's something completely different. I mean, in a very kind of bizarre way, I would say.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that aspect of it, honestly. Like, that it was something so different. I mean, really, you didn't really get to see Danielson work like this ever in ROH until, the Morishima matches, right? And I think even in the Morishima matches, he wasn't quite as dominated as he was here. I guess we'll see when we watch them. But, Danielson being like such an underdog made this so interesting. I think the one thing that probably would have made it better is if the crowd was on Danielson's side while he was getting the shit kicked out of him. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, if like they were rooting for him to, because even when he, made his comeback and won, they still booed him. But so that made it a little bit weird, but I enjoyed how different it was. I also thought that it, and then because of this, added intrigue to the Roderick Strong match, because then it's like, okay, Strong, like Danielson's coming in weakened, and he's really weakened. Besides the gash on his head, his back has been worked on, which is, kind of softens him for Strong's offense. So I think in that sense, this was effective. A negative is, based on this, you would think, all right, well then SUWA absolutely needs to get a rematch because he's taken it to Danielson like no one ever has. But instead, this was obviously just a one-off, and that wasn't going to happen, and they never really ever mentioned it again. So yeah. So that's the one negative. But as a match, I thought it was interesting and fun and good. And SUWA at one point wiped Danielson's blood on the ref's face, and I just thought to myself, man, am I glad I don't work in wrestling. I am just way too germaphobic. I've said this before. I'm just way too germophobic for this. I don't know how people do this. At the end of the match, they were doing headbutts and stuff, and I'm just like, man, this is not a good weekend for Bryan Danielson's head. Never mind Nigel's, obviously, but even Danielson, because he did a lot of headbutts in the match the night before. He's doing a bunch of headbutts here. And it's just, I guess it stands out to me more because that it did come back on him, like it's not like this stuff had no consequences. We know for sure it had very major consequences. So it makes it a little bit harder to watch. But yeah, I thought this was a cool match.
Yeah, and the cut on the head, like the crowd at one point, someone in the crowd, I don't think it was many people, it was probably just one person. They tried to start a "You need stitches" chant, which if that had caught on, that might have been one of the only ones in wrestling history. And I can't say that fan was wrong. I think he did need stitches. After the match, Prazak on commentary notes that Danielson has now beaten 2 wrestlers from Pro Wrestling Noah, Marufuji and SUWA. So I thought that was a nice, again, a little touch to say, hey, Danielson's on the march to Kenta, and he's beaten some other big juniors in Noah, and he's on the way to the biggest one. We now return backstage to find Davey Richards and Matt Sydal. Richards says a lot of people in Ring of Honor are wondering why he and Sydal are tagging up tonight. Davey says that's simple. The Briscoe brothers. They both have issues with them. And then Sydal says there's no way they're going to stop this combination of dynamic wrestlers, which is such an awkward verbiage. It almost felt like maybe Ring of Honor was scripted for just this one promo, because that sounds like you're not going to stop this combination of dynamic wrestlers.
Well, that's just like super like white meat baby face to the max right there.
Yeah. Again, more, attention to detail with the idea of like, well, why, like the fact that Gabe felt like we got to explain why are Davey Richards and Matt Sydal. I mean, the real reason is we've had a bunch of injuries, but like, they're just like, hey, and to be fair, there is tenuous, like, it doesn't feel like either guy has a hugely pressing thing, but like Richards and, Kenta did recently wrestle the Briscoes. Seidel, he's out, Generation Next is disbanded, but the Briscoes have recently had a problem with his former Generation Next friends. So yeah, technically they do both have reasons they might want to wrestle the Briscoes. So yeah, whatever.
Exactly.
My review,
exactly.
whatever.
Exactly. It's good that they did it, but also whatever.
Yeah.
They're baby faces and the Briscoes are heels. Boom, you did it.
Doug Williams defeats Jimmy Rave with scored to the ring by Prince Nana via pinfall in 20 minutes, 58 seconds with the Chaos Theory suplex. Before Rave comes out, Nana appears before the crowd like he did the night before, and he says, the night before tonight, we were in that dump. Liverpool's England, not Liverpool, Liverpool's England last night. He says, we were trying to luxuriate and think about the finer things. I like the idea he's not do the finer things. We were trying to think about the finer things. He was just imagining eating shrimp cocktail.
You're distracting me from thinking about luxury.
He says, but all we could see were people with teeth that weren't taken care of for many, many years, he says. He goes, and it actually gets the crowd really enjoyed that. This crowd loved booing the heels. They were like, that's a good line. We'll take that.
The turns of phrase are just so good.
So Nana says he's gonna party and then take a jet right out of this dump.
I hope they let Nana cut a promo on the Brits at Wembley Stadium.
I mean, he could do this promo verbatim because how many people have actually seen this promo? I mean, that would be great if he just started talking about their teeth and trying to think about the finer things in life. So yeah, fans start throwing toilet paper at Jimmy. Basically, the second, this crowd was very toilet paper happy. Like usually in America, the fans wait for him to get into the ring. Fans started throwing toilet paper at poor Jimmy Rave. The second he comes out of the curtain, they start throwing it at him. I was like,
this might be the toilet paper record right here.
They went nuts. So but yeah, that's again, this is another match that was not in the cards. This was supposed to be Rave versus Cabana. They give this a lot of time again because hey, the card's been shuffled up. Matt, what'd you think about this? Nearly 21 minutes here.
Well, you know that I'm a Doug Williams guy, so I'm going to be higher on his matches in ROH probably than other people are. I would say this was a tale of a couple of matches because I thought the first half was slow but logical, and I liked it. Then there was a botched superplex, which I'll get to in a minute. And after that, the match became exciting but kind of illogical, but overall got the crowd going. So I thought it was a good match. I thought it was probably too long. I think this match doesn't really seem like it was one that needed to be 20 minutes. But, again, I really enjoyed Doug's mat work at the beginning. I like that at the very beginning of the match, Jimmy Rave doesn't immediately stall. He goes into exchanging holds, and at one point Williams has Rave's legs kind of wrapped up, and he looks at the crowd, he's asking for toilet paper, suggesting that he's going to take the toilet paper and wipe Jimmy Rave's exposed ass. And when I say exposed, he is wearing his tights, but I just mean he has him in a position where his ass is reachable, I guess is what I would say. So I've never seen a wrestler suggest that he wanted to wipe another wrestler's ass before, and no one gives him the toilet paper, so he does not in fact do it, and I guess we'll never know if he actually would have. But the crowd was chanting the same homophobic stuff at Rave that they normally do, and also the same stuff they chanted at Hero. But there was one new novel homophobic chant, because they chanted Jimmy Swallows at him, and when he tells them to shut up, they respond by chanting Jimmy Spits, which I've never heard. But it is also possible that maybe what they were actually chanting was Jimmy Smits.
I knew you were going to do
that. Who is from, NYPD Blue, The West Wing. What else am I? LA Law.
Isn't he in some Star Wars thing or something? They're all in Star Wars nowadays.
Yeah, probably. But, I'm old, so that's what I know him from. So, that's probably what they were chanting. Because they were big fans of the West Wing in England. Gabe comes back on commentary at one point also. Just this time he's not burying anybody. He's just basking in the glow of being in England. So this was a little bit less of a newsworthy appearance by Jimmy Bauer on commentary. Not to be confused with another Jimmy who's related to this match, Jimmy Smits. Get it? Because I was going to say, never mind. Okay. At one point, Rave ducks down. He causes Williams to fall to the outside, and then Nana gets some shots in. There's a lot of Nana interference in this match. It seems like it was sort of like they were playing their greatest hits a little bit. But I think, having to work around Doug's technical style helped Rave kind of do something a little bit different, and I think he kept up pretty well. So the big botch was that Williams goes up on top, and Nana grabs his leg, which allows Rave to run up into the superplex spot. But instead, Rave crotches himself on the top rope. At least I'm like 90% sure it was a shoot, because they continue to battle, and Doug could have done his own move there, but instead they just punch each other until Rave recovers and hits the superplex, which I thought made it obvious that it was a botch. The fact that they were like, okay, we can't ad-lib here. We're just going to keep working until you can hit the spot you were planning on hitting. But the real unfortunate part of this was, oh my God, that probably really hurt to crotch yourself on the top rope without knowing that you were going to. When you do it in a planned way, at least you sort of probably know a way to do it to mitigate the pain. But if you just imagine just falling into a split position on the top rope, which is made of a steel cable, imagine how badly that hurts. I felt really bad for Rave.
It's crazy that I wonder how many. There's got to be a bunch of them, but I can't remember another time in wrestling where I felt off the top of my head I've seen a shoot crotch spot, because that always seems, whenever you see it, it's such a comical, over the top spot. But this was literally I am like you. I am sure this was because they immediately repeat the spot. If you want to see a shoot guy crotching himself on the ropes, Anarchy in the UK from 2006 Ring of Honor is for you.
Yeah, exactly. Now at this point they do pick up the pace. At one point Nana helps Rave up, but Williams knees Rave into Nana. He misses a top rope headbutt, or he hits the top rope headbutt, gets a 2 count. It goes for the Chaos Theory. Rave blocks, but runs into a belly-to-belly overhead throw. And then Williams hits 10 consecutive European uppercuts in the corner, but Rave immediately comes back with a spear out of the corner. So it's okay, well, I guess those European uppercuts are not that impactful. Rave drops Williams on his knee, hits a DDT. He goes for a belly-to-back superplex, but Williams keeps knocking him off. He teases that second rope gonorrhea, like the one he hit from the night before, but Williams hits a schoolboy off the middle rope, which you don't see too often, but Rave rolls through it, hits the knee to the face, gets a 2 count off that. Williams gets a 2 count off a quick roll up and then a jackknife pin. Williams ducks a roundhouse and goes for the Chaos Theory, but Rave blocks again, does a roll up with his feet on the ropes, gets a 2 count from there. Williams blocks the greeting from Ghana, and then Nana holds him while Rave runs at him, but Doug moves and Rave knocks Nana off the apron. And then Williams hits a big lariat, hits the bomb scare for a pretty believable near fall. Rave hits from dusk till dawn into the crossface, and now the crowd's really into it. They're begging Williams not to tap. Williams escapes, does the hammerlock hold with the bridge, but Rave makes the ropes. And then Rave sidesteps a knee, hits the spear, then hits the running knee, gets another 2 count, goes again for greetings from Ghana, but Williams reverses into the Chaos Theory and gets the clean pin, which is another job I was surprised. I was surprised to see Rave lose here, and I'm not really sure what the politics for that were. But I will say this, I liked the match, and I did think, they just it sort of felt too much like they flipped the switch right there and just suddenly got all their big moves, got a ton of near falls. But I thought it was very enjoyable the whole way through. Just maybe would have been better if it was a little bit shorter and a little bit kind of toned down. But don't you think at this point it's starting to feel like Rave is a little bit adrift? Probably more than he's been at any point since he joined up with Nana. It's he's jobbing here to guys who are not even part of the company. He really has no storyline. when Sal Rinauro was there, they could sort of book around the whole dynamic between the two of them. But even that's not really a push or a storyline. I can at this point I can sort of understand why Gabe decided a few months later to kind of repackage him without Nana, because he really felt like they did not really know what to do with him at this point.
Well, as I understand, and we'll get to it, I guess, at the time, I think it was Nana's decision to leave Ring of Honor. And yeah, then it seems like they changed whatever plans, because it felt like they were kind of trying to do the Jimmy Rave, Sal Rinauro tag team with the idea of Sal being the abused partner that eventually stands up for himself. But then once Nana goes, they very quickly drop that too. And yeah, so I was going to say, as adrift as Rave is starting to feel here, he's going to get more adrift in a little bit, because he's going to lose two other parts of his act coming up in the next few shows. But I thought of Jimmy Raves the night before was him being like more indie super worker than we had seen by the end of that match with Davey Richards than we had really seen by Raven quite a while in Ring of Honor. This is more heel Jimmy Rave to the nth degree. Like, it's a slower, at least in the first half, like it's slower, more methodical. In fact, the first 5 minutes of this match to me felt more like a backdrop to the crowd than anything else, because as much as the fans enjoyed booing Chris Hero earlier in the night, they enjoyed booing Jimmy Rave 100 times more. They showered him with all those chants. And so yeah, it felt like, it was enjoyable Williams mat work, but also felt like let's just let this crowd have their fun yelling at Rave for a long time, and then we'll get to wrestling. And like most Rave matches, he only gets control for the first point in the match when he cheats. In this case, he throws Williams to the floor, distracts the ref so Nana can attack him. And like you mentioned, Nana interferes a lot in this match. In fact, I don't think, Matt, we've ever seen Nana do as much interference in one match as he has here. Maybe like he's attacking Williams multiple times. He's pulling him by the leg to break up a near fall. He's even runs in the ring, does his big running hip attack in the corner. Like, he's done all these things, but I don't know if he's done them all in the same match. Like, It all builds to Nana holding Williams' arms behind his back, Williams ducking, Rave charging him. And like, Nana's great in this match, and the crowd loves chanting against him. It's the right call for this crowd. But I do wish they, again, like I always do, they protect the refs a bit better, because there are some spots in this match where they don't even – some spots they do distract the ref, but some spots they don't even try and hide it. In fact, I think Price on commentary at one point even says, like, the ref should have called for a DQ there, which – But
again, it's ROH, and they don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, we've been over this. Like, their disqualification rules are completely a matter of convenience to a storyline. Otherwise, it's basically a no DQ promotion. The only other matches that I could think of where Nana might have had comparable levels of interference were some of the matches with CM Punk.
Mm-hmm. That's a good poll, actually. Those might have been on this level. But then, like you, I agree. This match, it kind of gives you your usual final 5 minutes of ramped up bigger moves and near falls, except a lot of Jimmy Rave matches these days don't have that. And like you, it did feel kind of bolted on, like almost like this was kind of your more moderate, kind of minimalist, more focused on the heel work Jimmy Rave match. And then it kind of felt like at the end they were like, well, this is a night where they gave us a lot of time. Like, the card's kind of thin. We need to kind of carry some of the load of like the big, exciting stretch run match load. And it felt like they just kind of bolted on, let's do 5 minutes of bigger stuff that maybe I normally wouldn't do in this era. And they did here. I did like that he tried for the second rope gonorrhea, because he had never done it, at least in Ring of Honor off the top of my head, until the night before. So I like the idea that, like, he does it the first time, it works, it's a big move. So he decides the next night, like, I'm immediately going to go right back to this. I like that he tried it. I felt like this was another one of those matches where the crowd live was having an absolute blast, because they just love interacting with the heels and seeing this live. For me, it's another strong, like, good, like a 3.25 star match. It's kind of your formula mid-card Jimmy Rave heel match with extra healing, a great crowd, and then like this bolted on more main event, quote unquote, style closing stretch. We got the Princess Nana chant too. I don't know if that has to have happened before, but it seemed novelty. I was like, I'm shocked this doesn't happen more often, given wrestling fans.
But this crowd really loved their homophobic and gender-related chants. Like, they really loved it. I think more than most.
There was also a moment I liked where when Gabe came on commentary, he talks about like how great the weekend has been, like you said, but he goes, "I've been listening to the commentary in the truck." And I just love Ring of Honor Ring of Honor sometimes is surprisingly honest with like acknowledging their indiness. There's nothing more funny to me when they go the other way, when they're like, the idea that this is live and there's like a production truck in the back. I love that. Like, I'm listening to the commentary and gotta tell you guys. That was, and then of course after the match, Raven Nana even get the na 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 na, hey goodbye chant as they leave. So again, this crowd went apeshit on the chants. Also, there's a point in this match where Nana tries to psych Rave up by showing the Ghana flag, which gets boos, and I felt like that is like the most generic xenophobia, because it's like, how many fans in that crowd like know anything about Ghana? Like, right. Boo, how dare you? The Ghana flag, our mortal enemies in Ghana. Like you're literally at that point just booing the gesture. Like, you know the response it's supposed to get, but if you asked any of those fans, how much do you know about Ghana? Like, how many of them are going to give you an extensive answer? But they booed it all the same. Next, we see Bryan Danielson backstage, and his head cut's being checked by the doctor, and man, Matt, did it look gnarly. Like a huge open gash. It was actually
comparable to that Adam Pearce one from the 100th show.
It was to the point where it's actually like, I can handle this kind of stuff, but I feel like there are some, like we talk about these days, like warnings for content and stuff. I think some fans probably could have done with like a quick little graphic on the screen saying, you're about to see something very graphic, because man, that was a gross ass cut that they really show you. Bryan says a cut isn't going to stop him. He's going to prove once again why he's the best Ring of Honor champion of all time. So basically, that promo was just an excuse to show you, look how badly this guy's legit cut right now. He's going to go and wrestle another match tonight. That brings us to the semi-main event. The Briscoes of Jay and Mark Briscoe defeat Davey Richards and Matt Sydal in 26 minutes, 35 seconds when Jay pinned Sydal.
You think they had time to fill on this show?
Exactly. I mean, that's one of the themes of this show is a lot of matches got like an extra 5 minutes, probably more than they would have got on other shows. So yeah, the match ends when Jay pinned Sydal after he and Mark hit that simultaneous Mark Briscoe cutthroat driver, where at the same time Jay's coming off the top with the flying leg drop to the head. This match gave me a minor crisis when I was watching it, Matt, and before the end stretch, because I came into this match remembering that people really liked it. It has the high rating on Cage Match. I forget what, but it's pretty damn high. And halfway in, I felt like, okay, there's a fair amount of moves with a Z here, but there's nothing else to this match. And then I started realizing I've been making that criticism. I've been making that criticism more on recent episodes of Through the Years. And I felt like this is kind of a transition era where different guys are coming in and styles are evolving. And the focus from some of the wrestlers is starting to be more on just pushing the pace and jamming in as much action as you can over personality and storytelling and selling. And I like those matches, but I also am on the record, those matches kind of age the worst because the bar always gets risen for those kinds of matches. And I start to worry, like, am I going to check out of this match, and this era of Ring of Honor is like kind of retroactively passing me by? Like, I start to freak out a little bit. And then in the final 8 minutes of this match hits that crazy level that completely wins me over. And I breathed a sigh of relief, at least for one night, because this is a 26-minute match, and I think around 18 minutes in, I checked the time when this happened, Dave Prazak said something to the effect of, Davey Richards has done pretty much everything he can do in this match but his finisher. Now, he actually hadn't, but Prazak's point, I think, stood where it did feel like around that point in the match, like this was a point where they had done enough where the match easily could be entering its final minute. And they don't do a final minute. They do another 8 or more minutes of nothing but huge spots and near falls from that point. It almost felt like a 90s All Japan match, not in the style of the match, but just in that idea of, if you've seen a lot of those 90s All Japan main events where the stretch run of the match just keeps going and going and going, and yet it never loses you, or at least, and maybe it loses some people. Maybe you'll say you lost you. It didn't lose me, I'll say. It just, 8 minutes of just more. And if I could sum this match up with like one sentence, it's the fact that Jay Briscoe did the Steiner screwdriver and it wasn't the finish. Like, that's a kill death crazy move you hardly see wrestlers ever bring out. You don't see Jay Briscoe do it, and he does it in this match. and it's not the end. It's that kind of match where you're just doing everything you can do, and you're just, excess to the nth degree. Really, that was this. And again, I'll go back to like what I said with the Whitmer-Shiozaki match. I'm not always a fan of this kind of overkill for a variety of reasons, which I probably talked about in prior episodes. But if this was ever a show for that, it's these kind of matches on this kind of show where you need to kind of make up for some losses in talent. You need to give these fans like their money's worth in some way, and the way you do that is basically it's felt like on the show in some of these matches they just told the guys, we're not going to tell you to hold back tight, do as long as you want, whatever you want, go friggin' nuts. And this is a match where they did that. They went nuts. They did more in this match than probably some main events would do. And overall, I would give this like a flat 4 stars. I think it's a great match. But like low grade, but because again, there are parts of it where I was kind of antsy in the first half. I was kind of numb to it, not bored, but kind of numb. It's another match that doesn't really have a lot of the intangibles, but goddamn, did they go nuts, Matt?
I would also probably go around 4 stars, but I do think that actually it would be higher, but I do think it actually overstayed its welcome a little bit, which I think was a theme on this show. I think that, one thing I loved about the match with Aries and Strong from the night before was that they went nuts in that match too, but they didn't go so nuts that they lost the crowd or the crowd went down at all. They peaked at the right moment. I don't think this did. I think the crowd did go down a little bit from the peak. But as far as what you said about you're worrying about this era of Ring of Honor because the big moves matches aged the worst, maybe this is controversial to say, but I think you're going to be surprised that we're getting to the era in the late 2000s where I don't think those big moves from those eras like aged that badly. Like I think that like some of those big moves matches from that era like still seem pretty crazy. Like you said, a lot of the big moves here still seem crazy, right? Like it's not like And if you watch a big spot fest from like 1998, right? That seems like just like a generation and a half ago. It's like just like this is like a much more basic, much slower paced. The big moves are sloppier, right? Like it's just like they haven't gotten it down yet. I think by 2006, it's basically just what we have now, and and there have been small gradations of, you want to say improvement or development or whatever word you want to say, but it's not a whole different world. I think that you're going to be pleasantly surprised by the fact that you're not going to find that these matches don't hold up. You might not like them on their merits, but I don't think you're going to be like, oh, this was a great match then, but it's not now. I think the matches that were great in 2006, I would say at least 75% of them would still seem great to most people now too.
So a question for you then, because I know this is something you brought, and I agree with you on the first match you mentioned this on the show. You've mentioned multiple matches tonight where you felt like they overshot the peak, right? And that is a criticism. Again, I feel like we haven't had that often in through the years so far, but I do recall like in 2007, 2008, you were starting to hear a lot of people, not everyone, there was debates about it, but a bunch of people, you would hear more on shows like the idea of this match was great, they hit a peak, and then they went on for 5 more minutes. And I feel like, do you think this show is like a sign that we're starting to edge into that, where we're going to see more matches where you might say they hit a peak, then they did like another 3 to 5 minutes of spots?
It could be, but it could also be that these matches were all kind of booked at the last minute. Yeah. And, maybe the big matches that have a little bit more forethought behind it, because, ROH tends to book their big matches in advance during this era. That they might have had, been able to put more care into the pacing of the match. So I have hope that it's not going to be as bad as it could be. I think that we're going to see it, definitely, but I think there's going to be plenty of matches where it's done right. I mean, listen, we still see that, right? Matches that go past, like especially these high spot matches that go past their peak. It's kind of hard to know when the right thing is, but I will say this: it seems to me that a decent rule, because we've gotten to the now this is like the 3rd or 4th match that had the move where all 4 guys are down and everybody goes nuts. I feel like once you get to that moment in the match, you need to go get to the finish after that. Because the crowd is really high at that point, and they're expecting a crescendo, and if you don't hit it, they're just like, oh, okay. And like they'll still be in it, but they've kind of, their interest was peaked, and now they're sort of just like wondering as opposed to being fully engaged. That seems to be a trend, at least on this show. And it makes sense to me as a solid rule generally. I'm sure there are big exceptions to it, probably plenty of them, but I think on a standard, tag match without much build-up, it's probably a good rule.
Yeah, and I wonder if it's tougher nowadays because I feel like matches are more pre-planned. Like you so often hear wrestlers like at the end of matches saying, "Oh, that match was cut for time. The guys were mad because there was like 4 more minutes of spots they had planned that they had to cut out." I wonder if like a lot of times wrestlers now they feel almost helpless because wrestlers plan out, I think more than ever, a lot of their spots. If they go like, "Well, that kind of peaked, but we already kind of agreed that we're going to do like these 7 more things." And with time cues and stuff like that, like I wonder how much leeway do you have if you feel like, you know what, we had 3 more minutes, but you know what, I honestly feel like we're not going to top this now that we're like in the building doing it and I hear the crowd. Like how much leverage, like freedom do you have to just quickly tell everyone just let's stop right now?
Yeah, exactly. Couple other things I just want to mention about the match. One thing I really did like in the earlier portion of the match is, just like the night before, the Briscoes seemed very motivated, and they were just, all of their moves were just so on point. Their strikes, they do a Beal for Matt Sydal, where instead of throwing him really far, they just throw him up really, really high. At one point, they're chopping so stiffly, and Jay, I think accidentally, and I think it might have happened at one point in the previous night too, but Jay chops Richards in the neck, and you hear Matt Sydal yell, "Hey, that was in the neck. That was illegal." Wasn't there a match on Unified where somebody got chopped in the neck? And might that have been Davey Richards also? I have to go back and look at my notes, but I feel like Richards might have been accidentally neck chopped 2 nights in a row.
And didn't we talk about how through the years things up? Wasn't there like one of the 18 CM Punk controversies of the last 2 or 3 months was when they went back, the idea that people started microanalyzing the thing, going, "Oh, Punk was scared that, Hangman might be shooting on him because in this match you can see Hangman deliberately chopped CM Punk in the face or the throat or something."
Yeah,
and it's like,
I forgot about that.
It's like, no, Hangman already had a reputation for being a guy that not willfully, but he can be a little accidentally stiff. And we see talented, like you just pointed out, like I immediately my mind went to it, like talented, like Briscoe's very talented, mechanically sound wrestlers. You can accidentally chop a guy in the damn throat. It happens.
Yeah.
I don't think he was sending a message to Matt Sydal.
No, I don't think so either.
It'd be funny if he was. Okay, did you notice this, Matt? So I don't know if I mentioned on the last show, but when I was doing research, this is a chant I would not know what it means, except I listened to the Brit Wrestling Experience podcast from a couple years ago that they covered Unified. Check it out. Google it if you want to find it. They told a story where, I guess, to haze Matt Sydal, because apparently Ring of Honor had a fan book the travel bus from the Liverpool to Broxburn. And not only that, they made the poor fan had the responsibility of waking up the wrestlers, and he describes how some of these wrestlers were very not happy to be woken up so early because they were not told they were going to be woken up that early for like a 4 to 5 hour bus ride to Broxburn from Liverpool that they had to share with fans in the front of the bus. And apparently a lot of wrestlers were not happy with that. And apparently one thing you saw if you were on this magical bus ride was the wrestlers were hazing Matt Sydal. Apparently he was with a British last night before, and I forget exactly, but they basically made him do something like going, "I had 2 fingers up my ass last night," and they made him walk up and down the bus saying that. So if you watch this match, I don't know if you noticed this, Matt, early on, a bunch of fans start chanting 2 fingers at Matt Sydal.
Oh my goodness.
And he's kind of smiling, but he's and then later on, something Sydal does occasionally in his matches is he does the peace sign. And when he does that, that restarts the 2 fingers chant. And it's like he doesn't realize it. Like So if you
Oh,
were watching
boy.
this match and you want to know why fans were chanting two fingers at Matt Sydal, that is why they were chanting two fingers at him.
Yep, I definitely didn't know. Definitely did not notice.
Other moments of the match, there was like a brutal looking flying knee Mark Briscoe does to the back of Matt Sydal, where Matt Sydal is not like lying flat. He's kind of like on his side, and he just crushes him. Like, holy shit, this looked brutal. Jay does this crazy beatdown of Matt in the corner. That's only like 10 seconds long, but it's so brutal, even though it's just like a simple beatdown. It's so well done. It gets a round of applause from the crowd. Yeah, so all of that stuff. Do you have any more thoughts on the match? Because I don't know if we kind of interrupted you.
No, I didn't.
Or got off.
I didn't.
Yeah, so yeah, crazy match, especially by the end. After the match, the crowd rises to their feet and gives an immediate standing ovation. So this was, again, this is one of those matches for whatever quibbles we have, just like I think the opener. These were the right kind of matches for this crowd. They were eating up pretty much everything on this show to some level or not. They were saying, that was awesome. Everyone gets their own individual chants, and the two teams shake hands. So even though the Briscoes are going to kind of be still in a heel zone working with Cornette, after this, working against Homicide, on this double shot weekend, both nights ends with them like shaking hands, being respectful. And that brings us to the main event, the Ring of Honor World Title match. Bryan Danielson successfully defends his title for the second time in the night, this time defeating Roderick Strong via ref stoppage in 20 minutes, 8 seconds when Roderick passes out in the cow mutilation. So, Matt, this is one of those we've seen on through the years. We have seen a full trilogy before this from Roddy and Danielson. Their matches, I re-looked them up just to make sure. Those matches were 37 minutes, 47 minutes, and 56 minutes, respectively. And now we're getting the bite-sized, 20 minutes for most wrestlers. That's a good length of time. For these two, that's like this is the mini version. This is the fun size version. What do you think about a flat 20 from these two here?
Well, I think these two have really good chemistry, obviously. So even the least of their matches is going to be very good. And this was a really, really good match. I would say another like low great match. Whereas their other matches I thought were like high great matches. So it's not on that level. But one big contrast between this and the SUWA match, which I appreciated, but also thought was strange, was Danielson was pretty dominant here. Now, I like the contrast, but at the same time, doesn't it make Strong kind of look a little bit weak that he can't capitalize on Danielson being so beaten up in that previous match that he, at the very least, even if he's going to lose, he at the very least takes most of the match. That didn't happen here. In the end, it doesn't really matter. I thought Danielson did a great job. He slaps Strong in the face a bunch of times, getting Strong to chase him around, and then he just takes Strong down. And he, even though Danielson's cut on the top of his head opens up just a couple minutes into the match, so he's bleeding pretty gross pretty early on, but he still is dominant. There's one spot early where Strong ducks a Danielson strike, and then he kind of wears him out with chops and hits a backbreaker and overhead belly to belly. But then Danielson starts taking over again. He stomps on Strong's hand with a knuckle lock. Like he brings it down to the ground and then stomps it. He starts working over Strong. He does the surfboard tease, but instead jumps on Strong's knees. And it's very funny to me. The crowd starts chanting same old shit when I'm like, almost none of you have ever even seen this person live before. And already you're like, same old shit. Like, clearly you just like want to be cool like the New Jersey fans. Like, is this really what you're aspiring to right now?
You just got your DVDs that started the CZW ROH feud, and we're like, hey, I want to be like that,
Yeah. So chanting same old shit when deep down they're like, oh, this is awesome. We get to see this in person. It's very funny to me. At one point, even like Strong hits a heavy forearm, so Danielson slaps him again and knocks him down with the slap. So like they're clearly emphasizing that even though Danielson is a chicken shit, he's just as heavy a hitter as anybody. But I couldn't help but be like, I don't know, shouldn't Strong be like showing better here after he's wrestling a guy who's been so badly weakened. Like, it feels like almost like Danielson is more dominant here than he was in some of the other matches with Strong. He's kicking at him and taunting him verbally. Yeah, even Strong's comebacks are not that long before he gets cut off again. There is one point where Strong busts Danielson's lip open, so he does get that mark in his favor for damaging Danielson. But at one point, Strong comes off the middle rope. Danielson catches him with a Fujiwara armbar, goes right into the cattle mutilation, but Strong quickly fights out and hits a backbreaker and a Gibson driver, gets a 2 count. And then, they go pretty quickly into the big moves. O'Connor roll by Danielson. They trade heavy strikes. Strong ducks a roaring forearm and powers Danielson up into the fireman's carry for the gut buster. Then another forearm by Danielson gets a 2 count. Danielson tries to superplex Strong, but Strong hits a series of very hard strikes, knocks him off the ropes, and leaps off the top with the sick kick and goes right into the stronghold. So, this is pretty much the moment where Strong is getting the most offense. Sits into a Boston Crab. Danielson makes the bottom rope. He eventually gets another stronghold after getting out of the chicken wing. And he pulls him into the center, sits down again. And then Danielson does that roll-up thing, the way that he, where he escapes the Boston Crab and rolls up Strong. That's how he won their last match against each other at Supercard of Honor. So that was a nice allusion to that match, but Strong kicked out. And then they trade strikes again. Strong hits the sick kick, gets a 2 count. Danielson turns that into a crucifix, but Strong kicks out. Danielson starts elbowing. And then Strong fights out of the elbows, but Danielson gets him down again with more elbows, locks in the cattle mutilation, and Strong's arm drops, and Danielson wins very decisively. More decisively than in that previous match, that's for sure. And again, I thought this was a really good match. I thought the work was good. I liked, Danielson was great. He did kind of eat up Strong here, which surprised me. And I don't really understand why they decided to go that way after Danielson was coming into the match weak. If you can put that part out of your brain, I think this was a really good match. If you're trying to, make that logic work between the first match and the second match, I don't really know if they square that circle. But otherwise, I thought this was great.
One of my favorite things about doing a podcast with you, Matt, is occasionally I'll have a weird thought, not a weird thought, but just a thought, and I'll start thinking am I crazy? Am I being too hard on this or something? And then I'll let you go first. It'll be a match where you go first on giving opinions, and you'll be way more passionate and thought out about it than I. So it's there's very few better feelings in life than being unsure of your convictions, and then having someone you respect be even more passionate about it. It just gives you complete permission to react oh, I'm not crazy. Because I was I was thinking am I being too nitpicky thinking about how this looks for Roddy? And then you going so extensive, I was oh, thank God, I'm not alone. Matt's right by my side. Matt's leading the charge, in fact.
And same thing in reverse, by the way. When you validate an opinion I have, that definitely makes me feel more secure in my feelings.
So, I agree a lot, not just about the Roddy thing, but the overall quality. I would say this is my match of the night. I could say a lot of people, I could see them thinking that it depends what style you like. I could see if you just crazy popping off, going nuts shit, liking the semi-main event more than this. For me, this is like you said, another strong 4 stars, maybe 4.25. Honestly, if I could give a 4 1/5, Matt, I'd give this a 4 1/5 of a star. I think that's the right rating for this.
There's no rules in star ratings anymore, Trevor.
Yeah. But yeah, this is a more it feels like a condensed version of their longer matches. There are a couple new things. I'm not going to say this is completely retread, but I feel like it evokes a lot of the same vibes, including the Danielson kind of eating up Strong things, and you get a bit of that genuine dislike that you feel between them. Or I'm sure it's not genuine, but just you feel like they dislike each other in the match. It's got a lot of the same spots and a lot of the same vibe. it does have new things, like you mentioned, the callback to the finish, the roll-up finish that beat Strong at the WrestleMania weekend match. He survives. The elbows that beat him, I believe, at Vendetta, he almost survives. He gets Danielson up on his shoulders while he's getting elbowed to the head, but this time Danielson just keeps elbowing him while he's on his shoulders, drops him back down. So even though you and I think this match is I think we would argue this is the least of their 4 matches, in part because I feel like because it's not as long,
and I think there's not as deep of a story. I mean, again, this was probably not a match they expected to have, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there are interesting places the other matches go to and subtleties that, because of this being more just a shorter match that's more focused on, let's give them a nice action-packed main event, they just don't go to those places. But at the same time, I could see certain people liking this the best. Like, if you're a kind of person that you just watch those other matches, if you're just the kind of person that doesn't like longer matches, I could see you because this is much more action packed.
And it's if you don't like longer matches, you like this better because it's shorter.
Yeah, and just also because if we did some measurement of action density or something, I just feel like this is much more.
You mean work rate?
Exactly. If we were doing literal the rate at which they did the work, the moves, this is probably the best of those. Now, you and I think some people would think. A lot of people would think other, but I will just say, if you're a certain kind of fan, if you think you're that kind of fan that I just described, this might be the Roderick Danielson match for you above all others. For me, it's great, but yeah, and then going to your point, it is weird. I realized that most fans are going to be very conscious of why this match is happening. That was thrown out at the last second. And they're, it just did not affect the rise of Roderick Strong or anything like that. But yeah, I agree. It is weird to see Danielson eaten up by a guy that's not a regular. And then he kind of eats up Roderick. Roderick gets a fair amount of stuff in, but Danielson's pretty dominant, especially compared to SUWA. He's got an open wound that's bleeding. And then on top of that, just the fact that if you've watched the trilogy, again, that he wrestled 30-something minutes, 40-something, and then 50-something. The idea that now in this 4th match, Danielson's coming in having already wrestled a full match, hurt, and Strong is fresh, and he loses in half the time or less than the other matches. That feels like he's going backwards. It feels like, he's getting weaker against Danielson, not pushing him to a new limit.
And against a weakened Danielson.
Yeah, exactly. So again, I realized they couldn't have done it the other way, because I'm sure with the state Danielson was in and all this, you don't want to have to ask him, hey, just to favor the booking, could you wrestle another 55-minute match with Roderick Strong tonight? I know you couldn't have, it would have been stupid, but the way it worked out, unfortunately, has that unintended side effects. And this is also one of those matches where, boy, by the end of it, I felt like I know indie wrestlers don't make a lot in general. They're underpaid for the physical sacrifice in general. But this is one of those matches where I especially thought, by the end of it, Bryan Danielson, whatever he got paid tonight for this show, he did not make enough, because he had to do double duty. He gets busted open hard way in the back of his head, a brutal cut. He had just wrestled a crazy match the night before, doesn't really get to rest. And then he has to do this match where Roderick Strong busts him open hard way with, I think, a drop kick to the face. I rewound because it's after that spot he's coming up bleeding. By the end of the match, he's got blood coming from the back of his head again, from the, like you mentioned, it reopens early, and it's really starting to bleed by the end. And his chest is all bruised up by the end of the match, welted up from the prior wrestling. It's just holy crap, this guy is just beat to shit by the end of this weekend. And yeah. One other cool spot I want to mention, while I'm looking at the cool spots, there's a moment where Danielson and Strong are on the mat, and Bryan's choking Roddy with his legs wrapped around Roddy's head, and then he simultaneously, he elevates his torso off the canvas by posting up on his hands. And it just looks, I love when he does, it looks so cool. And then there's also a moment, watch for this during the match, for people if you're going to watch this match. Danielson, with Roddy's hitting him in a million strikes in the corner, watch Danielson's changing facial expressions as he gets hit with the strikes, that goes from kind of angry to in pain to I'm just unconscious on my feet. He just great facial expression work. Again, I always love finding more reasons to get mad at people from this era that said that Bryan Danielson did not have charisma. Like, fuck you. I'm going to get mad every week. I'm going to get mad every episode. I'm going to find a reason. He had so much charisma, or even Danielson was hard on himself sometimes in this era. And he keeps showing me little moments like that where most of the people on the card don't have facial expressions in the moment like that. But after the match, Prazak says he's just been informed that on the next 2 Ring of Honor shows, Bryan Danielson will be defending against Nigel McGuinness and Colt Cabana on successive nights, each in their own respective 2 out of 3 falls matches. Bryan leaves the ring first so Roddy can get a big thank you Roderick chant. And on a rare for Ring of Honor thing, no post-show at end of show angle or promo or anything. The show just ends on Roderick Strong, the loser, walking to the back, and that's it. That's Anarchy in the UK. A show that also, by the way, ends, I think, like it's like the mid 240s. This is not a show that goes to like 3 hours or 3 hours 15 minutes like a lot of Ring of Honor shows. This kind of ends a little bit early. So
yeah, and I was thinking about that. Like, this show ends early. There's been a few others recently, and like, if I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but like I have noticed, our shows have been probably shorter on average than they would have been when we were reviewing stuff from like 2002, 2003. And I was thinking about it, and it's like, this era of ROH, this show only had 7 matches, right?
Yeah.
And, you know, they don't do a lot of backstage stuff. Like, think back to those 2002 shows where those shows had like anywhere from like 10 to 14 matches, and there were like constant backstage promo segments and angles. There was just so much more for us to talk about. So I think like the reason why our shows are shorter is because they put less shit on these DVDs. It's just like much more focused. I think it's probably an improvement, but it is just an interesting to note the difference in the shows we're reviewing and how that affects the shows that we're doing as you know, as a podcast.
Yeah, we'll be getting that the next 2 shows too, because the next 2 shows, spoiler for people, each have an hour-long match on them. So that'll be, again, like another huge chunk of these shows will be taken up by 1 match apiece. So,
right.
Yeah, it's gonna be, it's gonna, you know, for people that, you know, are trying to fit in 18 podcasts in their like weekly diet and think that even every 2 or 3 weeks through the years is a burden, well, enjoy this while it lasts, because I'm sure there'll be some show that will be 4 hours long. But
yeah.
Right now,
well, the final battle show we got, we promised to make that one way too long.
But right now we are in a different period. But Matt, that was Anarchy in the UK. So I'm going to say this, Matt. I was thinking about how I was going to sum up this show the other day, and don't know if I've ever said this on Through the Years. I think this show is kind of cozy. Like, there's something about it where it's like, you know, it does kind of have that unscripted feel where like there's not a lot of long-term ramifications, there's a lot of thrown together stuff, but there's something about the small building, the fans having a really, like, just clearly having a really good time, everyone kind of working hard, like the weird unexpected, like even there's some good variety, like the SUWA match is completely different. You get your crazy 3-way spot fest, you get your like head dumping, you know, Noah style match with, you know, tons of near falls. You get your crazy modern indie in the semi-main event. I almost felt like I would recommend, I know some of our listeners either just listen to the show and don't watch the shows, and some of our listeners have told us that they like will make a point to watch every Ring of Honor show before they listen to the episode. I would say if you're not a person that does that, if you're a person that just will watch shows occasionally whenever you feel like it, save this show for like a snowy winter day, because I feel like it's not an essential show, but there's something that I just felt, it feels cozy to me, man. It feels like the kind of show where you don't want something that feels too special. Like, you don't feel like watching a WrestleMania. You just feeling like you're watching a nice little night of wrestling with some pretty damn good matches by the end of the night. I feel like this is a good show for that.
Well, that's definitely not the adjective I would have thought to use, but I understand what you're saying. I thought this was another in a line of like good B shows. Like, I think actually top to bottom, I think I like the undercard of this one more than I like the undercard of Unified. I don't think that the main events measure up, but just as far as like a solid, you know, almost 3-hour DVD, I think this is just a really nice night of wrestling where the wrestlers work hard and deliver, and the matches are good, sometimes great, and the booking is mostly solid. But there's nothing that's going to be earth shattering for the promotion or for any of the wrestlers. Um, I think this is like, I'm trying to think of what it could be compared to, like a good Coliseum video release or something.
Yeah.
No, but I thought this was a quite good show, and overall, an excellent weekend for ROH. That said, it'll be nice to go back to the States in the next show and just kind of like get the full band back together.
Yeah.
Some of the characters we've been missing, like Irish Airborne. I don't know. Hey, what are you trying to say about Irish Airborne? No, but no, you know what I mean.
Yeah. No, I agree. I was saying the other day, one of the weird things about doing a Ring of Honor podcast, especially with our schedule, is like if a guy just isn't booked for like 2 straight shows, it means we kind of say goodbye to them for like 2 months. Like we haven't talked about Samoa Joe for a while now,
Yeah.
By the time we get to the next episode, it'll be like a couple months probably. So
Yep.
yeah, Homicide, guys like that. So yeah, I do completely know what you mean. Like it's like, oh, we have a couple old friends that we haven't seen in a while that we're used to seeing more often. But
yes,
we will see them on the next episode. But
I do want to mention to the listeners, there might be a slightly more extended gap between the show and the next show, just because of various things going on. Maybe an extra week or two than normal, but we'll be back, and it won't be too long.
Yeah, that's a great point, because we got things going on in our lives. The end of summer's coming up, and there's lots of wrestling that we are compelled to watch.
Yeah, you'll have plenty of wrestling podcasts to listen to in the meantime.
Yeah, exactly. I actually feel like sometimes it's good that we don't sometimes do shows during really busy periods of wrestling, because I feel like if you are a wrestling fan, you're either watching the shows, and then if you listen to podcasts, you're probably listening to podcasts that are covering those shows. So you know what? We'll be back in the first like slow week afterwards, or the second slow week. We'll be ready for you then. But so it'll work out well for everybody. So for the plugs, as usual, throughtheyears@gmail.com, THROH for through, at Trevor Dame on Twitter, at Mayor MGF on Twitter. I refuse to say XMAT. Can't stop. Can't do it. Won't do it. Next time on the show, we will be covering Epic Encounter 2. ROH is back in America. They're in that ROH hotbed of Minnesota. Wade Keller's attending it live. The main event, Nigel McGuinness, Bryan Danielson, in a 2 out of 3 falls match that goes an hour, that Bryan Danielson has on the record saying he does not like. So obviously, his opinion is invalid. The only opinion that matters is us. We will tell you if it's good or not next time on Through the Years. Until then, have a good time. Have a great time.